Do you spend hours in your head thinking about something that happened, could have happened, or might happen? Do you ask others what to do so you don't make a mistake? Welcome to the Playing It Safe podcast. I am Dr. Z, your host. I am a clinical psychologist, an author, and a person that is super passionate about sharing with you science-based skills to overcome any type of fear-based struggles. Who doesn't experience fear? Who doesn't play it safe? In this show, we will discuss how fear-based reactions happen in day-to-day life, how playing it safe behaviors look like, sound like, and feel like, how you can put into action solid tips from behavioral science to get unstuck from worries, fears, obsessions, and anxieties, and how you can start doing what works, what matters, and what you care about. Behavioral science doesn't have to be boring. Thanks for listening, and let's get started. Hello, and thank you for being here today. I am super excited. I think I'm excited every time I am introducing an episode, but hang in there with me. I am excited to share with you another episode on a particular type of thoughts that keep us stuck. A particular type of thoughts that we all relate to in some way, in some color, in some shape. What's unique about this particular type of thoughts is that they can quickly take us into a rabbit hole of thinking and thinking. Over the last couple of months, in different episodes, I have been sharing with you different tips and skills to develop a new relationship with your mind, to develop a new way of understanding how your mind works and how our minds have a life in its own. So this episode is part of that effort to help you to step back and watch what your mind does. Before I jump into the episode, I want to say once again, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for all the emails and messages you sent me, and I want to encourage you to keep doing so. I always love to hear from you. Keep in mind that after September, I am going to have extra episodes in the podcast. So please make sure that you are subscribed to it so you don't miss any episode. On another note, I want to encourage you once again to subscribe to the newsletter, Playing It Safe. And here's why. A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine asked me, Patricia, why should I subscribe to the newsletter when I am listening to the podcast? And I realized that I didn't explain this to my friends or to any of you, but the content of the podcast is different than the content of the newsletter. For example, the first Wednesday of every month, I share in the newsletter a new blog post or a new article that I work on. I also share different resources like a 27-page template for you to do an annual review of how you have been living your life. I also share from time to time the behind the scenes of the projects I am working on, like a webinar, a book, or an online class. And starting in September, I'm also going to announce in the newsletter private and exclusive webinars I want to be doing for anyone that is part of the Playing It Safe community. So I will highly recommend that you subscribe to the newsletter. You can do it by going to the website playingitsafe.zone. That is www.playingitsafe.zone. You can select the option newsletter and then you can enter your email. And then every Wednesday you will hear from me, and I promise that I don't have any intention to inundate your inbox. My goal is to continue to create really good content that is compassionate-based, research-based, is based on acceptance and commitment skills that can help you to get unstuck from any fear-based struggle you're dealing with. Now, I leave you with this episode on negative predictions. Have a wonderful day and see you next week. Bye-bye. In episode 21, I shared with you some tips to develop a new relationship with your mind. And I also shared with you why I think this is very, very important. And it's not that I am an enemy of thinking. Of course, we have to rely on our thoughts. We need to have hypotheses, dreams, aspirations, cause-effect relationships. That's just what our minds do. But I think it's really, really tricky when we take our mind very seriously and we believe that we are defined by our thoughts, or we believe that we have to think in a particular way to do something effective. There are different ways in which you can develop a new relationship with your mind. Some people like to practice mindfulness regularly, and that's great. I also did a series of episodes on how you can practice mindfulness on the go as you move throughout your day, especially when things get rocky and especially when you are having judgmental and self-criticizing thoughts. I think what is important, sorry for repeating myself here, is to keep in mind that the more that we learn to step back and watch what our mind does and relate to our mind in a different way, the more skillful we are going to be to handle all types of situations in our day-to-day life. Now, in this episode, I want to focus on one of the things that our minds do. When we feel anxious, and we can feel anxious about all types of things, one of the things that our mind does is predicting outcomes. What's going to happen in the next few minutes? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? What's going to happen next year? For example, if you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you that your blood pressure is too high, your mind leaps to the future and you see yourself having to eat a very boring vegan diet. You imagine that you have to take a bunch of pills. You imagine that now you have to exercise every single day. And finally, you may imagine that you are going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Now, all these predictions make sense. Of course, our mind is going to anticipate what could happen in the future. Predicting outcomes, planning for the future, and learning from our mistakes is natural and it can be very beneficial. They are survival skills, right? But too much of predictions can be really, really bad. When you think too long and too hard about all the things that could go wrong, you are not just planning for the future. You are worrying. And of course, when something matters to you, you are going to be concerned about messing things up, and your mind is going to be concerned about things going wrong. Here's what you can do to handle effectively those negative predictions. If you think about it, all the thinking that our mind does, it has a purpose. And those negative predictions have a purpose too. When you ask yourself, what's the purpose of this prediction? You may find out that the purpose of it is almost always the same: to reduce anxiety, to reduce uncertainty, to prepare you for bad things that might happen, and to somehow keep you safe. And if you ask yourself, is this prediction accomplishing its purpose? You will also find that the answer to this second question is also almost always the same. Your predictions make you feel more anxious and scared, because when you are dwelling on catastrophic visions and terrible views of the future, that doesn't help you to feel more secure. That doesn't help you to feel more prepared. And it definitely doesn't help you to feel safe. It actually has the opposite effect. It keeps you anxious. So just to recap, I am not saying that having a negative prediction is bad by itself. But I am saying that if you engage in those negative predictions over and over, and put a lot of effort on them, that's a different story. You are not planning, you are not preparing yourself, you're actually keeping yourself anxious. When we feel anxious, it's a natural thing that our minds are going to focus on all the negative aspects of any situation. And they may also exaggerate some of the things that could go wrong. And given that our minds don't take vacation, don't take holidays, and they are always coming up with all types of content, like negative predictions, it's important that you develop a new relationship with those types of thoughts. So I hope that you can put into action these 2 mini tips. If you are catching yourself with any thought that says it's going to be bad, really bad, this is going to go wrong, you can check if it's productive or unproductive for you to engage in those negative predictions, and you can question the purpose of those predictions. Let me know how it goes, and I wish you a great week. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, I will very much appreciate it if you will subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. And if you're feeling extra generous, I welcome a review on Apple Podcasts. Show notes of this episode are in the website playingitsafe.zone. Make sure to subscribe to my newsletter so you can receive more tips to stop all types of unworkable playing it safe actions. See you soon!